Boy, do I love infinite loops. They say the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. This describes infinite loops in card games to a T, but what it defines even better is how game developers keep designing these things and still expect them to not break the game. So who's the Joker now, society? The devs have actually been pretty competent in the last couple of years by actually banning anything that causes infinite loops, even if they're incredibly inconsistent and aren't actually that good. But when a company who's juggling 37 different gacha games like Bushiroad only puts one ban list out every 2 years, there's bound to be a couple of infinite loops that slide through the cracks, which is absolutely the case in Vanguard's newest and strangest infinite loop yet. It's no surprise or news to anyone that Ethics Buster Reverse is one of the worst cards printed in the last couple of years. It's made the message clear and apparent that Nova Grappler is a hopeless clan and Bushiroad hates them. So when I heard the news that they have an infinite loop that doesn't require you to play the worst card in the game, and instead the second worst card in the game, I naturally became very skeptical until I realized that this insanely broken Nova Grappler loop isn't even in Nova Grappler. If you're a bit new to this game, let me explain something. There was a card a couple of years ago called Omega Glendios who required you to play a bunch of evil versions of boss units from other clans, so they established this rule that you can play cards with reverse in their name in Link Joker. Unlike the Majesty Lord Blaster rule where you had to play a copy of MLB in your deck, you don't actually have to play Omega Glendios in your Link Joker deck to play reverses. Until now, this didn't matter because all of the reverses were bad. But with the release of the new clan collection, all of the names are the same, they really need to change this. The new set, we have brand new reverse units, although they're mostly bad, but they do have some funny interactions in Premium when you put them in Link Joker, the two prime culprits being Himiko and Ethics Buster. While Himiko is usually used in a Geese build that involves you locking and unlocking your own units to get drive checks, our new friend Ethics Buster decided he would LARP as a Messiah card and crack a couple of trial deck commons wide open. But is it even consistent? Surprisingly enough, it is more consistent than the Unbeliever Girl loop, Elizabeth, and Refrose's loops. It comes across kind of as a toned down version of the Tonba loop. The result is infinite power, but you don't really have infinite units attacking with that power. You're sort of restricted by how many cards that get infinite power you're opening. All this means is instead of using this to OTK your opponent, you instead use this to get them like 2 or 3 damage. So you need a way of closing the gap early game. Here's everything you need to pull the combo off. First, we need to be on Ethics Buster Reverse, namely because we need our rear guards to lock during the attack step, which will then allow us to abuse the next card, which is Lady Battler of the White Dwarf. Her effect is that on GB1 when she boosts, you can unlock something and give it power. The power doesn't really matter though. The card you boost and unlock is going to be Awakening Messiah, who is then going to stand your White Dwarf. And finally, in addition to White Dwarf having basically infinite power, these two cards are also pretty important because they're the only other things in our deck that also get infinite power when you lock or unlock. These cards aren't needed for the loop, but they are the cards that benefit from the loop. So I'm going to demonstrate how the loop works now. Most importantly, we need to ride our Ethics Buster. If you want more things attacking, you might want to ride another grade 3 with an Excel the turn prior, just so you can call down your other infinite power cards. In my case, I used Maelstrom because I personally find that its advantage and damage pushing early game is actually pretty important. So this right here is the column that we value most, which is Awaking in front of White Dwarf. If you're trying to play through Disruption, you might want another column of this, but it's not entirely needed because everything happens during the attack step. So we're going to call our 2 cards out that get the infinite power, and basically we're looking at 3 infinite power attacks as of now. So we're going to attack with this Awaking column. Ethics Buster is going to lock the Awakening Messiah. Then our White Dwarf here is going to unlock the Awakening Messiah. Then finally our Awakening Messiah is going to stand our White Dwarf and give it 2000 power. Every time this happened, because a card was locked and unlocked, Metalia Messiah will gain 6000 and Balrother will gain 5000. So we're just going to keep doing this until our power is basically infinite. Awakening stands White Dwarf then gets 2000 power, we rinse and repeat. The reason Awakening Messiah doesn't keep the power is because it keeps locking. White Dwarf will keep the power because it is never locked during the combo. Now something important in Vanguard's rules is that if you have something that could potentially go infinite, you can declare that you're doing it an infinite amount of times, and you don't have to sit there turning your card sideways as your opponent waits waits it out by going home and playing a game of Counter-Strike. So as long as we declare that we're doing it an infinite amount of times, we can in fact beat over Overtriggers. Something else kind of important to note is that Metalia Messiah can't be locked by card effects. So if for whatever reason you need to attack with one of your infinite power cards before you attack with your Vanguard, you can go ahead and do that. Something else pretty cheeky is you can slap Baelrother behind your Vanguard, and your Vanguard now hits infinite power. Now I'm gonna go over the deck list just so I can explain how to maximize consistency in this deck. Naturally, we have 4 Ethics Buster Reverse, integral piece to the combo, and then we also have 2 Maelstrom Reverse. You don't need to play these if you don't want to. If you can think of a better way of increasing the damage gap while also getting an early Excel in Link Joker, please let me know. But this is the next best reverse that gets an Excel marker, so I am playing this one. Another key note is that if we ride one of these and get an Excel in Link Joker, then we ride either another reverse or another Link Joker card with a gift marker. That card will now generate an Excel instead of the gift that it would be generating. So if we ride like Ethics Buster or Maelstrom, and then we ride something that can spam gifts, I don't know what there is in either of these clans, we can in theory farm even more Excels. For grade 2s, we have 4 Awaking, 3 Metalia, this should be 4. The fact that it can't be locked before your Vanguard attacks is actually kind of important. And then we're running 5 copies of your insert 10k power draw filter card. You don't need these ratios, but the fact that they're 10k power and they can also filter through our deck is incredibly important. Dealing with aggressive decks like Eradicators and Nightmare Dolls is crucial to surviving this premium format, and these cards can also provide somewhat of a mid-battle phase setup to where we can actually just get our loop pieces in the battle phase and unlock them. Both of these cards are also important because if we are facing a deck where we can't actually do the ethics loop, whether it be chaos or something with some form of disruption that we can't out, we can actually just play this deck like Excel Messiah, and these cards interact with and have some really nice plays with all of our strides. Next up we have 4 Baelrother, 4 White Dwarf, both integral to the loop. I will probably cut a Baelrother for another Metalia Messiah, and the remaining 7 cards can be a mix of more consistency pieces and cards that will let your loop actually survive disruption. I really like Manipulator of the Void because it adds early game pressure, while Destiny Dealer adds early game advantage, and it also meshes really well with our strides. We can also use Destiny Dealer as a way to get more pieces on our kill turn if we don't have enough. And finally, Connell, check out my video on why this card is good. You don't need to run this. This card basically just lets combo decks play through Interruption a lot easier. If you want to cut this for consistency cards, absolutely do that. For grade 0s, we are playing a fuck ton of draws because draws are really good in loop decks. They get our pieces very easily, and they help us when we are being rushed, which is something loop decks have a very hard time with. I am actually playing crits for a couple of reasons. Firstly, this loop doesn't actually do anything unless our opponent is at least 3 damage. Also, they let us stride. Also, they have shield. Overall, pretty good. There will be games where we aren't able to get our loop because we don't have GB yet, so being able to stride is actually really important, which leads us to the heal guards. Again, very important for being rushed, as well as getting GB without having to stride, which lets us get to our loop a turn early if we are actually able to get to it. And naturally, finally, our Overtrigger, best one in the game. If we are about to lose the game and we flip this, we instead win the game. It's pretty self-explanatory. Please ban these. G-Zone, we got 2 Barrio End. A lot of decks generate too many Excels for us to manage, and this provides an out to something like Harry or Nightmare Dolls, as well as getting some crits, which is actually pretty important in the early game, to where if our opponent no guards it, we can then win the game with the loop next turn because they'll be at like 4 or 5. 2 Glue Ball. Glue Ball's actually very good when we're stalling to the point where we can get our loop pieces. If we need to save ourselves a turn, Glue Ball can lock our opponent down so that we have a little bit of time to draw our pieces. Integral Messiah is our resident Messiah combo card. If we don't care about locking or removing gifts, this lets us generate a ton of advantage first stride so that we can get our win con next turn. This also works as a win con in itself. You don't actually need the hand shuffle effect because we can't pull it off in this deck, but it still works as a good unlock card. It combos really well with our grade 1s and our grade 2s. We're playing 2 Big Crunchy, same reason as Glue Ball. If we have a big board we're staring down, we can lock 2 of the cards, Omega lock them, and then lock the rest with a Glue Ball next turn. Helps us bide some time while we're searching our win con. Sabreeze is probably the most important stride in this entire G-Zone. If your opponent is trying to deny you GB for getting the loop, if they didn't ride last turn, we can stride Sabreeze, punish them, get the GB, and then loop them next turn. G-Guards, we got 2 Racktome, pretty standard for a loop deck. We need to see our pieces. Dismal, in case we top deck and lock something off of like Destiny Dealer and it's one of our combo pieces, we can protect it with Dismal. Death Surgeon just draws a card if we lock something. Demon Maxwell's actually pretty good. It works kind of like a second Dismal. If we have an extra turn we need to bide time for to get more pieces, we can protect the ones we have with Demon Maxwell. It also gets Shield, which is pretty good. And then one of each of our 2 Resident Disruptors. We actually rarely go into these, but Cosmo Wreath comes up sometimes. We can actually mess with the mirror match by locking their back row. Basically, there's a lot of decks, more than it seems, that actually care about having a back row for their combos. And then naturally our starter is the V starter. We need to draw cards. There is no reason to play any other starter. Another important thing to note is that Lady Battler of the White Dwarf is the grade 3 searcher in V series, so we can't play it. Unfortunately, that's why we have to play so many consistency and draw cards. Without the grade 3 searcher, we actually have a hard time searching our heal guards, so we have to fill our deck with as many drop draws as possible. I know I'm making it seem a lot harder to pull the loop off than it actually is, but these are the types of consistency issues we need to account for in a deck that can't play the grade 3 searchers. Finally, I'd like to propose some sort of way to deal with this loop on the ban list. I know a lot of people are talking about choice restricting or banning reverse cards in Link Joker. I don't think that's the answer, and I think that's too much of a slippery slope in terms of how you can play reverse decks in Link Joker. I think the best possible thing to do is to choice restrict White Dwarf with Ethics Buster Reverse. Either that or a Waking Messiah, either one works. If they can hit something as sacky and inconsistent as the Unbelievagirl loop, they can hit this. So once again, I know I say this way too much on this channel. Bushiroad, please do something about this.
Good morning!